The Astane Empire was the strongest on the entire continent. Since the founding of the empire, the O'Clane family has protected its prestige. It was from this family that the legendary alchemist demonstrated his mastery in this science. And this talent was passed down from generation to generation. Each successive descendant honed their alchemical skills for the sake of the family business, allowing the O'Clines to maintain a high reputation in society. At the time of the events described, the family owned the largest alchemy workshop. The head of the family was Hymes O'Cline. Many alchemists looked up to him. He used this science to create various types of weapons, which increased the military power of the empire several times. That is why he was called the father of all weapons. For this man, his daughter was the most valuable person in the world. Hymes entered the workshop, leaning slightly on his cane. All the students greeted Mr. O'Cline with joy. The man smiled and asked her to continue her work and not pay attention to him. He had simply come to see his daughter. The leader found her in the next room. A girl in protective glasses was trying to light a blowtorch. She was as fiery red-haired as her father. The father coughed lightly into his fist. He thought he was paying too much attention to her. The daughter didn't react, so the man called her by name. Rebecca lifted her glasses, happy to see her father. She immediately rushed to meet him, asking how he was and what brought him here. Hymes replied that he was feeling better. Then he added that he wanted to talk. He thought he had to be strict with his daughter. The girl was delighted and assured him that she was going to visit him in the evening anyway. This time, she had done a really decent thing. She began to tell that at first she tried to make a potion to remove scars. But her father put his hand on her shoulder, not letting her finish. Rebecca didn't understand what he meant. Hymes replied that he was talking about her alchemy studies. The girl asked again, in what sense? The man, still holding his daughter by the shoulders, replied that she was already 24 years old. Time was flying by. The daughter suggested that perhaps it was because of Judith. Because she had seen Rebecca reading a book in secret during the ball yesterday, she began to explain that there was a small space behind the curtain. The girl thought that no one would notice her there. She began to apologize and promised that next time she would be more careful. Hymes assured me that was not the case. There was a rumor that if the daughter did not marry this year, she would have problems. Her father allowed her to do whatever she wanted. But it was time to put it all aside and prepare for the wedding. Rebecca screamed that she didn't want to get married. Her father asked her what she was going to do then. The girl replied that she would continue to work in the workshop as an alchemist. The man asked if William would allow her to do so. He told him something, namely, as soon as his father is gone, he will not take care of the girl. And she knows that he doesn't have many personal assets. He can pass them on to his daughter, but it still won't be enough to live independently. Rebecca shouted that even if she had to live in poverty, she wanted to do what she liked. Now she is happy, and working every day as an alchemist is for her. The father shouted that it was enough. He had made a promise to her mother that she would never practice alchemy. The father turned away sadly. The daughter asked him why he was against it. The man asked if she really thought she could make a living from alchemy. She needs to think about all the things she's done up until this point. None of them are worth anything. So let her stop practicing alchemy and start thinking about marriage. It's all for her own good. The upset girl rushed to the temple of the great Artel. She fell to her knees before the monument of the great dragoness and crossed her fingers in prayer. Rebecca thought that the goddess already knew what she wanted. After all, Artel always looks after everyone. She began to say that her father wanted her to get married. He also wants the girl to stop practicing alchemy. The priest calls her an old maid, although Rebecca is only 24 years old. With tears in her eyes, she cried out that she didn't want this. She didn't want to get married, and she didn't want to give up alchemy. The girl just wanted to live as she was. Rebecca hung her head sadly and said that her father had never scolded her before. But it seemed that all this time, he had thought of her as a talentless alchemist. The girl turned to the goddess and said that she knew the truth. Rebecca was actually a great alchemist. This situation awakened mixed feelings in her, but it will be stronger. After all, now is not the time to create this. The times that the legendary O'Clane mentioned have not yet come, so she made a firm promise that she would continue to uphold the O'Cline legacy and proudly bear the title of alchemist. But Rebecca didn't know how to do it yet. She might have to run away from home. and she turned to the great Artel for help. While talking to the goddess, the girl did not notice how the man was watching her. Wiping away her tears, she looked around and saw a small handkerchief on the floor not far away. Rebecca was surprised and picked up the purple thing. She squeezed it in her hand and asked if the goddess had given it to her. She was touched. The girl sniffed it. The handkerchief was soft to the touch and smelled nice. She wondered who could have left it. Carlisle Rowanster was one of the Dukes of Astane and was also the first swordsman to appear in the Empire. He had a striking appearance and a powerful, masculine body. Women admired him and dreamed of snuggling up to his body. Some claimed that they had never seen anyone so tall. Others went crazy over his broad shoulders and beautiful dark uniform. He was always surrounded by a crowd of admirers who believed that the great dragon goddess Artel had bestowed upon him all possible love. The man got tired of such excessive attention and began to frown. And even this the girls considered delightful. Haley Carcius, the Duke's daughter, shamed the crowd of admirers for holding up the Duke on his way to see the Emperor. She reminded them that it was not proper for the Emperor to wait. The women began to whisper indignantly about who she thought she was. Carlisle took advantage of the pause in his admirers and quickly slipped past. As he approached the exit, he glanced back and glanced sideways at the crowd, singling out Haley. The girl looked at him with her open blue eyes, which made the man shudder. Carlisle entered the palace and walked towards the Emperor. Finding His Majesty working on documents, the young man bowed in greeting. The previous emperor asked for no formalities. He decided to get straight to the point, asking the question point blank when the guy was going to get married. The Duke was surprised, then bowed and replied that he had no such plans yet. His Majesty coughed and then said that he could not rest until he was prepared to settle down. Rowanster noted that according to the royal physician, the only problem was that His Majesty was too healthy for his age. The previous emperor hissed at the boy and said that when you become a decrepit old man, you never know what might happen tomorrow. The Duke's father was a close friend of the Lord and the husband of his dear sister. He was young when he gave his life to save the emperor on the battlefield. The boy wanted to object, but the emperor growled at him, calling him a heartless boy. His father, before his death, begged His Majesty to attend his son's wedding in his place, as he was leaving the child at such an early age. The Duke became a little quiet and remarked that he had no young lady in mind. The emperor replied that he knew how hard it was for him. After all, he is the center of their female attention after all. And it is exhausting. Uncle banged on the table and said that no matter how hard he tried to be patient, there was simply no end to it. Carlisle asked His Majesty to give him a little more time, and he will introduce him to the one he wants to marry. The emperor exclaimed that he had no shame. He had heard this from him many times. Therefore, he ordered him to marry within this year. The boy was indignant, but the emperor warned him that if he did not do this, he would personally arrange a marriage of convenience for him. The Duke, upset, went out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. His cousin, the current Emperor Aubert, came up to him. He noticed that he looked sad. Then he asked what his father had told him. Carlisle sadly replied that he wanted his wedding within a year, or that he was in for a marriage of convenience. The emperor agreed that this was harsh. He assumed that since the previous emperor had gone so far, his aunt must have already given in to him. His lordship sighed deeply. He knew he would eventually have to marry. His Majesty remarked that this was true. You can't just let the Rowanster bloodline go to waste. But he really needs to settle down now that he's 28. Aubert added that if he were him, he would go to Lady Haley. Frankly, she is the most beautiful of them all. The Duke replied that he did not care about her looks. The Emperor laughed. He expressed doubts that this lady would give him the opportunity to marry another. She was already behaving like his fiancée. Carlisle said it didn't matter. He wouldn't take her. His Majesty countered that it would only make things worse for him if he alienated House Carcius. His lordship replied that he did not care. And turning away, he left. He went to the temple. It was the most comfortable and peaceful place of all. At the entrance, he greeted the monks passing by and entered the main hall, hoping to find temporary peace. There he froze, because he saw a girl sitting near the monument of the goddess. That red-orange hair seemed familiar to him. 10 years ago, young Carlisle was hiding from his fans in the park. The girls were looking for him among the vegetation and did not notice the guy hiding behind a tree trunk. Noticing that the ladies had passed by, the young duke decided that he needed to get out of there quickly. He had no idea why they were following him. The boy gathered his courage and quickly ran away from the park. He ran into the nearest door of the mansion. Looking around, the milord closed the door. Not far from the entrance, the door to the storage room was slightly open. Carlyle breathed a sigh of relief and decided that this was a great option for hiding. But near the window on the floor, he saw a red-haired girl who was reading a book. She was very concentrated. Then she looked back at the noise and saw the guy screaming in surprise. The redhead quickly jumped up and, pressing the book to her chest, asked who he was. The Duke was taken aback by her reaction, so he remained silent. The girl asked if he had come to look for her. The guy shook his head. The girl calmed down, smiled, returned to her seat, and continued reading. Rowenster was a little scared. It turned out he wasn't the only one who came here for privacy. The redhead continued to read the book with concentration and did not pay any attention to him. Carlyle even thought about leaving. After all, she might suddenly try to pounce on him like the others. And the girl took out a pen and started writing something, muttering about some formula. It was strange to see her reading a book at a party. Even his younger sister was so excited to come to the appointment that she spent several hours preening her skin and hair. The Duke came closer to see what book she was reading. Seeing familiar symbols, he realized it was alchemy. The redhead was calculating something and couldn't understand why it wasn't adding up. Carlyle coughed lightly to get her attention, but she didn't react. He coughed louder. Only now did the girl look back and ask in confusion what was wrong. Rowenster came closer and, pointing to the book, said that this part seemed wrong. She chuckled and looked more closely. Then suddenly you shouted, "Yes!" and raised the book up, completely stunning the young man. The redhead turned to him and, smiling, thanked him. She said that it worked now and buried her face in her book again. Carlyle was puzzled. He had never seen anything like this. This girl was not interested in him at all. He wondered if she knew who he was. Putting together her red hair and alchemy, he guessed that she was from the O'Clane family. Perhaps this lady, like him, did not like social events. And she was also quite nice. Although this was the first such case, it did not cause hostility. And now in the temple, having overheard her indignation at the fact that a young noblewoman must necessarily get married, he realized that she had not changed at all. Rebecca was crying near the goddess, covering her face with her hands, so she didn't hear how Carlyle carefully approached her and left his handkerchief next to her. After the temple, the Duke went to the family mansion. He found his mother near the fountain. The man bowed to the Duchess in greeting. Abigail noticed that he looked better than she had expected. The woman thought that her brother would immediately issue an imperial decree against him. The son replied that he had done it technically. The Duchess asked what had happened to his face then. Carlyle grinned and asked what he should look like. The woman thought about it. Then the son asked her what she thought of the O'Clane family. Abigail replied that, like them, this family has a long history. They have been around since a stain came into existence. The very first of the O'Clane family was a legendary alchemist. Not to mention that the head of the House of Hymes had done many things for their empire. Then the Duchess mentioned that he had a daughter, and then she realized what he was getting at. Her son coughed sheepishly and said he wanted to send a marriage proposal to Rebecca O'Clane. Almost all the representatives of the alchemist family gathered in the living room. There was a gentle knock on the door. William allowed entry. Rebecca peered into the room warily. She said that her older brother wanted to see her. Looking around the room, she saw not only him, but also his wife, Judith, his father, and his middle brother, Locke. The atmosphere seemed gloomy. With a strange expression on his face, William handed her the envelope and told her that she had received a marriage proposal. The girl took the envelope, looking at her brother with apprehension. She was surprised by his expression. He should be glad to get rid of her in such a way. After opening the envelope, Rebecca prayed to the great Artel. It turns out that she really has no choice but to give up alchemy and get married. Her eyes widened when she saw who was asking her to marry him. The Duke of Rowenster. Some time later, a carriage drawn by 4 horses staggered towards the Duke's mansion. The carriage stopped, and Rebecca O'Clane stepped out of the carriage in a smart dress. A couple of servants greeted the guest. Seeing the luxurious building, the girl's eyes lit up with delight. The Duke's estate was on a completely different level. One of the servants bowed and said that his lordship was waiting for her. He offered to follow him. The rich architecture and luxurious interior design of the estate got on her nerves a little, making her tremble. Her dress was also a bit of a bother. Rebecca had never worn anything like it before. It was uncomfortable. The servants opened the door for her with a slight creak. The girl swallowed nervously and stepped inside. The man standing in front of her greeted her and introduced himself. Rebecca returned the greeting and stumbled as she approached the Duke. The man pretended not to notice. Carlyle invited her to sit down in the chair. He noted that he had prepared tea for her and expressed the hope that she would enjoy it. The redhead thought it was sweet of him not to notice her blunder. She mentally ordered herself to pull herself together. The girl replied to his lordship that she liked tea. With slightly constrained movements, Rebecca took a few sips of the drink. The Duke smiled. He assumed that his guest was surprised by his sudden proposal of marriage. At the mention of this, the girl's hand shook slightly, spilling the liquid. She abruptly put the cup back in the saucer and replied that she was very surprised. The lady awkwardly adjusted her hair and noticed that she was definitely not the one who deserved him. Rebecca mentally instructed herself not to be nervous. Carlyle laughed. He couldn't just tell her that she had completely ignored him while reading a book in the past. He pulled himself together and apologized. The girl noted that she did not consider herself worthy of accepting such an offer from him. Rowanster replied, taking a sip of tea, that frankly, he had no plans to marry her. Rebecca jumped up and emotionally shouted out why he had sent the invitation then. She had to listen to so much from her relatives regarding this marriage. Her daughter-in-law said that it was $1 million chance that such a person would choose her. William added that she should accept the proposal no matter what. If she refused, she would no longer be part of their family. Pulling herself together, the girl sat back down in the chair, trying to say something, but unable to find the words. The Duke said that everything was fine, and she could say whatever she wanted. He added that the reason he sent her the invitation was because he knows her and was in the same boat. Rebecca asked again, surprised. My lord clarified that he knew she was being pressured to get engaged, and so was he. The girl's eyes widened, then she rose from her chair and, leaning towards the man, began to whisper to him about his mother, which made the guy blush. He replied that his mother had nothing to do with it. It was his uncle, the former emperor, who was insisting on the marriage. Carlyle explained that he was in a difficult position because he did not want to tie the knot anytime soon. What's worse is that the man he's opposing is the former emperor. Rebecca noted that it was already difficult for her to go against her family, but for him, it was probably much more difficult. Rowanster smiled. He knew she would understand. The thing was, when he received His Majesty's order to marry, he was very upset, so he visited the Temple of Artel. The girl jumped up in horror, realizing that he had heard everything. The man confirmed and said that this is how he understood her situation. The blushing guest asked if he had left the handkerchief behind. The Duke confirmed it. He said that it was easy for him to hide his presence, since he was a swordsman. However, he did not want to eavesdrop. The man decided that their meeting was part of the goddess's plan. Rebecca looked at him in surprise. Carlyle approached his guest and asked her how she felt about entering into a contractual engagement with him. The girl's mouth even fell open in surprise. She asked again. The Duke repeated. Rebecca thought about it, so he wanted them to pretend to be engaged. Rowanster continued. Usually, an engagement lasts from 3 months to 2 years. In this case, he wanted their relationship to last 2 years. The redhead clarified that he wanted to avoid pressure by arranging a fake engagement. The man confirmed. Rebecca remarked that she didn't think it was a good idea. After 2 years, the engagement would be broken off, and the families would start pressuring them again. So it's like postponing the inevitable. Carlyle agreed, but added that a lot could change in 2 years. The girl was not sure she understood him. The Duke specified that he had received an order from His Majesty, but after 2 years, he would not be able to order him anything. This includes forced marriages of convenience. Rebecca asked if he was referring to the hatching tradition. Rowanster confirmed. Such a tradition exists only in the imperial family of Astane. The first ruler of the empire was the son of the great dragon Artel. She was worried when her son ascended the throne, so the dragon stayed in the imperial capital to look after him and all his children. To this day, Artel remains the guardian of the empire. In honor of her maternal love, the imperial family created the hatching tradition. the ability of the former emperor to provide assistance to the new emperor. According to this tradition, the former emperor continues to have some imperial power. Therefore, you cannot refuse his orders. But in 2 years, it will not make sense, because he will give up his power to spend the rest of his life leisurely in the emperor's palace in the south. The guest asked whether the current emperor would then put pressure on him. Carlyle smiled and replied that he would not. He thought that his cousin wouldn't risk his relationship with the swordsman for some pathetic wedding. If they make a contract, the Duke will ask her to stay here under the pretext of undergoing training before entering into marriage. Rebecca jumped up indignantly, asking about his desire for her to remain on the estate. The man replied that his family would be informed of their agreement, so there was nothing to worry about. Officially, she will receive wedding lessons from his mother. In reality, she will be allowed to do whatever she wants. His lordship even promises to turn one of the outbuildings into her personal workshop. This news stunned this girl. Her eyes lit up. She already imagined a whole workshop just for her. It was a tempting offer. Rowenster added that when their contract ends, the engagement will be quietly called off. However, he will sponsor her for the rest of her days. Rebecca asked him what he meant by sponsor. The Duke explained that he would prepare a residence for her, also provides all the essentials for her alchemy research. The lady can also choose where to stay. His lordship will make sure that the ex-bride always has finances, and this is forever. At the word forever, Rebecca's eyes and mouth opened at the same time. Carlyle added that if she wanted, he could invest in a workshop for her. The redhead stopped him. She warned him that she would not be able to create anything valuable like a weapon. The Duke laughed and said that it was nothing. His family had a lot of money, and he personally had quite enough savings. Rebecca was touched. She noticed that he really seemed to hate this whole wedding thing. Rowenster coughed lightly and said that everything said would be included in the contract. Nothing would be changed or removed. The girl intertwined the fingers of both hands and replied that she believed him. However, this was all very serious. But although she is extremely grateful for his offer, Rebecca would like to take a little time to think things over. Carlyle agreed and asked that once she made a decision, she should visit him again. His marriage proposal would still buy them some time. The man smiled charmingly. When Rebecca returned home, all her relatives pounced on her with questions, but having promised that she would tell everything tomorrow, she quickly ran to her room. Having closed the door, the girl leaned against it. But after a small knock, the father entered the room. Putting his hand on her shoulder, he said that he understood how she was. The middle brother was also worried about her. This situation must really be putting pressure on her, considering she ran straight to her room instead of to her workshop. However, the Duke is a good man. Rebecca confirmed this and noted that he was too good even for her. Himes added that the Duchess has many responsibilities, but she will also have many privileges. And among the other candidates in the Empire, this is truly the best option. The Rowensters have always been kind to their family. The girl mentally answered her father that she was not really getting married. It was just a contract to deceive both families. The father said that last night in his dream he saw his mother. She asked him if her daughter was happy, but then he woke up and could not answer her. Her mother, Cordelia, went through many hardships. After all, she was a noblewoman who did not have a title. When she appeared in his dream again, he would proudly tell her that their daughter would soon become a duchess. He was sure that his wife would be happy. As he left the room, the man smiled and said that he would not disturb her rest. When the door slammed behind him, Rebecca was left alone with her problem. She didn't know what to do, so she decided that alchemy would help her relax. The girl changed her clothes and went to the workshop. When she entered, she met confused students. They were fidgeting and could not really explain what had happened. Rebecca looked around and noticed that her things were missing. Her desk, her notes, her designs. She screamed, "Where are all her things?" The boys, nervous to the point of shaking, answered that her brother William told them to put everything away yesterday. He said she wouldn't need them anymore because her sister was getting married. Still in shock, she asked him what he had done with her notes. Filled with rage, the girl went to look for her brother. The guy was looking through documents in the office. He couldn't even imagine that his sister would marry a duke. However, this has its advantages. The door swung open, and an enraged Rebecca burst into the room, screaming about why he had gotten rid of all her things in the workshop. She also asked what he had done with her notes and creations. She slammed her hands on the table and asked where he had thrown them. Her brother shouted at her, asking what she was thinking. The girl retorted that she wanted to ask him a question. William replied that he had a limit to his tolerance for her arrogance. He was now the head of the O'Clane family. The man stood up from his chair. He pointed his finger at her and said that his sister should at least show a little respect. Rebecca called out, asking for an answer to the question of why he had cleared her desk. The maids could be seen whispering in the open doorway. William frowned. So this girl dared to humiliate him in front of the servants. Leaning on the table, he asked what her problem was. She's getting married soon, so it's time to leave all these childhood dreams behind. He asked if his sister really thought she could become an alchemist. Then he screamed that everything she had made was useless trash. The only reason she had a place in the workshop was because her father allowed it. Rebecca was indignant that this was irrelevant. She had taken the test just like everyone else. The brother asked what she had done. The sister had never created anything truly valuable, so no one would call her an alchemist. Then the girl asked what he had created. He took this place only because he was the son of his father. William bit his lip and replied that at least he could see what really mattered, while all she did was experiment with useless things. Rebecca asked ironically what he wanted from her. Probably for her to create the Philosopher's Stone. Then his sister asked what the legendary O'Clane could create. William half turned to her and replied that he was not an idiot to believe in such dreams. He strives for real success, like his father. The girl noted that this meant he was creating weapons. Then she asked how his progress was going, if he has any ideas. After all, he has failed in many projects. The brother became a little quiet and asked how she knew. Rebecca responded that he had spent their entire family fortune, and now he was trying to criticize her abilities as an alchemist. The guy tried to say something else, but the girl turned around and headed towards the exit. She thanked him for making her realize that she didn't have to think about it anymore. Rebecca is going to marry the Duke of Roenster, and now she is sure that this is the right decision. The girl slammed the door behind her. Left alone, William thought with hope that she was not planning to abandon their family after the wedding. He reassured himself that everything would be fine. Rebecca found her father in the library. Noticing his daughter's anxiety, he asked what had happened. The girl threw herself into her father's arms and began to complain that the bastard William had gotten rid of her desk in the workshop and had also thrown out all her notes and developments. The man hugged his daughter, trying to calm her down. He said that she would give it up anyway, so there was no need to be so upset. Rebecca was surprised. Himes reminded her that she was getting married soon. Therefore, all her notes and creations were meaningless now. Then, coughing a little, the man added that he did not consider his son's actions to be correct, since he had thrown out her things without permission. The girl tried to say that it was not about that, but her father interrupted her and noted that now that it had happened, he could take advantage of the situation. She can concentrate on her wedding lessons and engagement. He coughed again. Rebecca said that was not what she wanted. The girl asked if she were not his daughter, would they accept her into the workshop? Himes was surprised. He understood that she did not like it, but a new coughing fit prevented him from finishing. Having cleared his throat, the man asked his daughter not to be angry. It didn't matter to him whether she was an alchemist or not. She would always be his dearest daughter. Rebecca wondered if her father had ever acknowledged her as an alchemist. She realized that neither William, nor Judith, nor Locke, nor her father, none of them had ever looked at her as an alchemist. At that moment, O'Clane's daughter was determined to sign the engagement contract. She would make everyone see her as a true alchemist. The Duke of Roenster was working on paperwork in his study when a servant announced that he had a visitor. The man asked who it was. He was informed that Lady Rebecca O'Clane had arrived. Carlyle, as he walked into the drawing room, thought that it had happened sooner than he had expected. The maids, watching the gentleman, whispered in surprise that his lordship was going to get engaged. After all, he always had an aversion to women. Rebecca was waiting for his lordship in an armchair, drinking a cup of tea kindly provided by the servants. She looked back as he entered. Seeing his smile, the girl relaxed a little. The Duke came up to her and said hello. He sat down in the chair opposite. The lady apologized for coming so early. His lordship replied that it was quite all right. Then he asked if anything had happened. The redhead was visibly worried. She replied that she had trouble sleeping last night, but otherwise everything was fine. The man asked if she had had breakfast. Rebecca replied that she had no appetite. Rowenster said that, in fact, he had not eaten either. So he suggested that they have breakfast together. Calling the butler, his lordship asked him to prepare breakfast for them. Then he asked if she had come there because she had made a decision. The girl replied that she did. She accepted his proposal to conclude an engagement contract. The Duke asked why she had decided to accept it. She seemed a little hesitant last time, so he thought it would take more time to make a decision. The maids brought the food on a special table on wheels. Carlyle recommended trying the soup prepared by their chef. The soup came with small tartlets, toast, butter, and a strawberry dessert. Everything looked delicious. Rebecca devoured the food with gusto. The Duke smiled, watching her. The girl praised the soup, and the gentleman was glad that she liked it. After breakfast, Carlyle remarked that as long as their agreement lasted, he would consider her his own person. Even if it is a fake engagement, he promises to treat her with the utmost respect. The lady thanked him and promised to do the same. To be honest, she wasn't sure how much she could tell him. The girl meant about her situation. His lordship encouraged her and suggested that she should say whatever she wanted without embarrassment, even if she would swear. Rebecca jumped up indignantly and said that she would not have dared to utter such words before his lordship. Carlyle smiled and motioned for her to sit down. Then he noted that his lordship sounded too formal. He suggested that they call each other by their first names. When the girl sat back in her chair, the man added that he believed they had a lot in common. They both don't want to participate in high society life and want other things to take priority. The lady agreed. After he had put it that way, she would no longer hesitate. The Duke asked what had really happened that had led to the quick decision. Rebecca began her story. Since childhood, her dream was to become an alchemist. After she followed her father into his workshop for the first time, she couldn't imagine herself with anyone else. While other young ladies were taking etiquette lessons and learning how to arrange flowers and embroider, she was practicing alchemy with her father. At 15, the girl passed the exam like everyone else, receiving the highest score. Thanks to this, she got her own small table in the workshop. Rebecca thought it was a privilege she got for getting the highest score. She thought everyone recognized her as an alchemist, but yesterday the girl learned the truth. Until now, no one had ever really seen her as an alchemist. After a pause, Rebecca asked his lordship if he, too, thought she was nothing more than a joke. Carlyle replied that he did not think so. He knew that the lady was the most passionate and hardworking alchemist in the world. The girl was stunned by his answer. She asked how he could be so sure of that. The Duke smiled and replied that it was because of her hands. Rebecca looked at her hands. They were scratched and burned in places. Rowenster added that her hands were proof of all her efforts. The scar on her index finger looks like it was caused by a small cut with a knife. The girl confirmed that she got it while cutting grass. There is also a scar from a light burn nearby and a fairly large wound on her thumb. But most importantly, she has accumulated a lot of calluses. Rebecca's eyes widened in surprise, and she asked him how he had seen all this. The Duke replied that it was his ability as a swordmaster. It can temporarily improve your eyesight. The lady giggled and said it was hard to believe that these were the hands of a noble girl. Her sister-in-law had scolded her for it more than once. Carlyle said he didn't think it was worth scolding. It was a sign of her hard work. Rebecca was so touched by his words that small tears involuntarily appeared in her eyes. She apologized and brushed them away with her hands. Rowenster handed her a handkerchief and asked if she would accept his second handkerchief. The girl thanked him. His words of encouragement gave her a strong resolve. She vowed that she would force her family to acknowledge her as an alchemist. The Duke handed her the contract. While she read it carefully, the man thought about how her dreams could be called childish. After all, she strives for this so persistently. His lordship decided to open up to her a little too. He said that when he first picked up a sword, his teacher said that he had never seen a child with a worse stance in his entire life. Rebecca was surprised, because he was the greatest swordsman in the empire. The man replied that it was because he kept working hard and never gave up. Those who give their all for what they love and do not allow ridicule and criticism to deter them, these are the people who always achieve success. That's why Carlyle is confident that the day will come when her efforts will also be rewarded. After a moment of surprise, Rebecca smiled and thanked the Duke. Then she signed the contract. A little later, at a family tea party of the Rowanster family, Charlotte, the Duke's younger sister, asked in surprise about the contractual betrothal. The Duchess confirmed that she had heard correctly. Abigail really doesn't know who her son is taking his cue from when he makes such stupid decisions. The daughter thought that most likely from her mother. The woman continued that she was sure that her brother, the former emperor, already knew all about this scheme. Charlotte angrily asked to forget about Carlisle. She was afraid for the lady. After all, she would get nothing from it. If she breaks off the engagement after 2 years, it will be almost impossible for her to marry someone else. The mother sadly agreed with this. Then she added that this was too pernicious a proposal for a noble lady. The sister confirmed and asked her brother to find another way. The Duke did not react to their words, so the girl yelled at him not to sit there like it wasn't his problem. The man calmly said that the contract had already been signed. Both women were indignant. Charlotte wanted to say that even if she was called an eccentric lady, but his lordship interrupted and asked what she was called. The girl repeated once again that her nickname in high society is eccentric lady. Then she continued her thought. In any case, even if of all people it is Lady Rebecca, then no lady can agree to this. There must be some misunderstanding here. Getting up from the sofa, Carlisle said that they would understand everything when they met his bride. Abigail remarked that, judging by the fact that her idiot son's cheek was in order, Lady Rebecca must be a very patient and kind girl. Charlotte angrily hit the sofa cushion. She agreed that her brother deserved to be slapped. Then, after thinking for a bit, the girl suggested that it might be the other way around. Perhaps it was the lady who was deceiving her brother. She recalled that when he was 15, a woman dressed as a maid to enter his bedroom. And then there was the lady who threatened to kill herself if he refused to marry her. And then there was the Marchioness, who acted as if he was already hers. And then there was the woman who pounced on him completely naked. Maybe Lady Rebecca is like them. Carlisle didn't respond to this and turned to leave. His sister asked him what he was going to do. The Duke replied that he would invite his bride to dinner in a few days, where he would formally introduce her to the two of them. As he walked down the corridor, his lordship reflected that Rebecca was not like that. He was truly grateful that she had not changed at all over the years. The betrothal of the Duke of Rowanster was already in full swing. All the ladies were indignant. They believed that one woman could not have him exclusively for herself. Everyone was trying to figure out who this Lady Rebecca was. Someone remembered that she was that eccentric lady. Who is eccentric, doesn't know how to wear dresses, and never follows trends. And she was once scolded for secretly reading a thick book at a ball. One lady said that she was sure of this information, as both families had officially made a statement. The ladies remembered the Marchioness of Haley. After all, she said that she was going to be engaged to the Duke of Rowanster. The ladies began to pity the Marchioness, supposing that she must be very upset. She declined all invitations to tea, claiming illness. At this time, Haley was watching the rain from her window. The Marquis entered her room and asked what happened that she did not come out of her room. The girl quietly asked her father if he had heard that the Duke was going to get engaged, but not to her, but to Lady Rebecca. Of all people, this is the strangest lady of high society. Her hands gripped the fabric of her dress until it trembled. Under the rumble of thunder, the girl cried out that she had stolen it from her. The Marquise noted that it seemed the former emperor had put pressure on Carlisle. Haley wondered why Rebecca, and not her. The father tried to calm his daughter down by saying that this was probably just part of the Duke's plan. He was clearly trying to buy time until the hatching tradition expired. The girl approached the Marquis and replied furiously that in any case, she could not accept it. She asked her father if he realized how much of a laughingstock she had become in society. The Marquis tried to calm her down. He asked Duchess Abigail several times, but she wants to leave the decision entirely to her son. So there's nothing to be done about it. The girl angrily called the Duchess an ungrateful old hag. It was she who defended her Charlotte in high society. Haley asked her father to break off the engagement. The man replied that it was not in his power. The O'Clynes have had good relations with their family for many generations. They are very helpful. The daughter cried out that they were only an insignificant count's house. The father objected that they could not be compared with other houses of that rank. It wouldn't even be surprising if they were elevated to the rank of Marquis or Duke right this second, since this family produces all the weapons of the empire. and that they also improve and repair everything. Haley noted that the O'Clane's magical weapons and tools are nothing without the Cardias certification. House O'Clane has influence in the Empire as much as they do. The Marquis said they could not act recklessly. Haley cried out, "What does that mean?" "Father means she has no choice but to let this woman take the Duke from her." The man asked if it had to be Carlisle. If she wanted, he could make her queen of another kingdom. The daughter screamed that no. Carlisle was the only one who could protect her if she wanted to live her life in peace. She needed him. The father asked her if she had still not recovered from what had happened then. The daughter replied that it was their fault that she was like this, so if he feels sorry for everything, he will do everything possible to make sure that she gets Carlisle. Because if she had to take this into her own hands, she honestly didn't know what would happen. Haley turned back to the window. Watching the rain, the girl thought angrily about how Rebecca dared to try to separate the Duke from her. A few days later, Rebecca, dressed in a new dress, arrived at the Duke's mansion. She was visibly tense. As she stepped out of the carriage, the girl bowed in greeting to Abigail and Charlotte, who were meeting her. She remarked that it was a great honor for her to meet them. The women smiled and replied that they were also pleased to meet her and finally meet her. They said they wanted to meet her before the engagement ceremony and get to know her better. And she deserves an apology. Rebecca was surprised at the apology. The Duchess explained that although she wanted the contract too, such a deal would be detrimental to any lady, so she would like to apologize on behalf of her son. The girl did not quite understand what she meant, so she asked why this deal was harmful. Abigail said she didn't have to protect Carlisle like that. Rebecca was completely confused. She asked how she was protecting him. Then, scratching the back of her head, the guest said embarrassedly that she clearly did not understand something and apologized to the Duchess. The women smiled and replied that she had nothing to apologize for. But still, her ladyship asked again if she was sure that she agreed to an arranged engagement. The girl, nervously fiddling with her fingers, replied that yes, she needed it as much as the Duke did, after which she asked the ladies if they agreed to this. The ladies looked at each other. Abigail replied that as long as the two of them were okay, she had no doubts. Charlotte confirmed. Then, moving closer to Rebecca and grabbing her hands, she told her to feel free to call her by her first name, after which she noticed that her brother told her that she wanted to continue practicing alchemy. Hostia confirmed this and shyly asked if she could do so. Charlotte said sure, and asked to show them too if she did anything interesting. In fact, she had recently read a book about a magical lighthouse. Rebecca asked if she meant the Manisa lighthouse. Both girls began to glow with joy as they began to discuss a topic that was interesting to both of them. Abigail watched the young ladies with a smile on her face. Carlisle came up and greeted the guest. Then everyone sat down at the table in a cozy gazebo with a beautiful view. After a pleasant dinner, Rebecca said goodbye to everyone, and the Duke led her to the carriage. Before the carriage had even moved away, Charlotte asked her mother what she thought. But Abigail turned the question to her. The daughter chuckled and said that Rebecca was definitely different from other noble girls. It was very easy to tell what she was thinking. The Duchess agreed and added that the girl was polite, but she did not seem accustomed to the manners of high society. Charlotte noted that she liked the fact that she didn't have to be nervous around her guest. Abigail added that the girl did seem unusual, but she liked her. The daughter frowned a little and said that her makeup and dresses were a little... She hesitated a little and then simply said that they didn't suit her at all. Mother agreed that Rebecca needed a helping hand for the engagement ceremony. A few days later, on the day of the ceremony, the servants were finishing the final preparations for the celebration. Rebecca walked thoughtfully through all this fuss. She wore a bright dress and makeup to match. She thought about the fact that today was finally the engagement. Looking around, the girl noticed how luxurious everything looked. The Rowenster family said they would take care of all the arrangements and expenses. Although Judith was happy that they were able to save money, she would definitely spend it on her new dress anyway. Rebecca still wondered if what they were planning was really right. Her thoughts were interrupted by Charlotte, who, remembering the gentleman, covered her mouth with her hand when she saw the girl. She noticed that the guest had arrived clearly dressed up. The girl became embarrassed and replied that her daughter-in-law continued to insist despite her assertion that everything was fine. Looking at Rebecca's bright makeup, Carlisle's sister noticed that she had put in a lot of effort, but she has a style that suits her better. Grabbing the guest's hand, she pulled her along. The Duke, waiting for his bride, pulled at his neckerchief. He felt very uncomfortable, but he persuaded himself to just be patient for today. The butler came up and said that the lady would be coming down. Hearing the sound of heels, Carlyle looked back. Rebecca came down the stairs in a beautiful emerald dress, with her hair elegantly pulled up at the top. She looked so charming that his lordship's mouth involuntarily opened. The man was amazed, and when the girl came down to him, he noticed that he almost didn't recognize her. It was as if she was a completely different person. Rebecca smiled and asked if it was a compliment. The Duke was embarrassed by his blunder. He bowed and asked for forgiveness. Carlyle was so surprised that he could not immediately find the right words. The girl replied that Charlotte had helped her, and she thought that she, too, had been shocked to see herself in the mirror. His sister was very skilled. She also realized that she really was like her mother. Then she wondered if she would have supported her decision if she were alive. The Duke took her hand and kissed the back of her hand, which surprised Rebecca greatly. Charlotte, who was watching them from afar, was also shocked by her brother's actions. Even Carlyle himself was surprised by what he had just done. He wondered if it had been too much. Rebecca decided that he must be used to this, since he was always very popular with the girls. She reminded him that everyone was waiting for them. Rowenster cleared his throat and suggested that they go to the guests. The girl took his arm, and they headed for the door. While waiting for the heroes of the occasion, the guests chatted with each other in the garden, drinking drinks. Hymes O'Clane mentioned to his younger son that he was a little disappointed when the Duke wanted a small celebration for only close relatives. Nevertheless, the ceremony was still wonderful. The newlyweds looked harmonious together. The Rowensters certainly put in a lot of effort, Locke added, saying they had said the wedding would be even bigger. At this time, it was time for the engagement ceremony itself. The abbot blessed the future bride and groom. Judith, watching the ceremony with a frown on her face, thought that her daughter-in-law's dress and jewelry must have cost a fortune. Hymes, in a conversation with the Duchess, mentioned his hopes that she would take good care of his daughter from now on. Her ladyship smiled and noted that he had given them his precious daughter. And of course, she would make sure she was comfortable. The woman thought that she should now feel guilty for her son's actions. A little girl with a basket full of flower petals walked among the guests, scattering them and congratulating them on their engagement. William approached the newlyweds. He congratulated his sister and apologized for what happened in the workshop. Rebecca turned to him. She did not believe in the sincerity of his regrets. She remembered her middle brother. On that fateful day, Locke gave her a box of her belongings. He said he had secretly hidden them away from William. The girl was happy to get her notes and work back. She thanked him sincerely. The boy apologized for being a bad middle brother and not being able to stop William. Rebecca didn't understand what he was talking about. He's the best brother. Locke put his arm around his sister and told her to remember that he always thought of her as an amazing alchemist. So she shouldn't give up. Judith also came up to congratulate him, giggling and asking him to never forget that this was all thanks to her. Hymes then came up to congratulate his daughter. The girl thanked him. The man bowed and expressed his hope that the Duke would take good care of her. Carlyle bowed back and promised to make Rebecca happy. Then came the conversation with all the other guests. Taking a moment, the Duke whispered that, due to the hustle and bustle, he had not been able to tell her that the building had finally been completely converted into her workshop. Rebecca immediately asked for this news. The man added that he promised her that she would not regret agreeing to this contract. Later that evening, the newlywed bride paced back and forth in her room. Rosaline, her maid, remarked that if she continued walking like that, it would be difficult to clean up because of all the dust. The girl kept glancing at the door. She noted that the Duke was late. The maid replied that he had a lot to take care of. She was sure that his lordship would be here soon. Besides, the Duke's name was different. Rebecca asked what she meant. The maid said, "Just look at this room. It is filled with only the best quality things that can be found." It turns out that it is true that the Rowenster estate is as stunning as the Imperial Palace. Rebecca tilted her head in surprise and asked if she really thought so. There was a knock at the door. Then it opened and Carlyle appeared. The girl ran up to him happily. The man asked her if she liked her room. Rebecca replied admiringly that she did. The Duke smiled. Then he caught himself. He found himself smiling whenever he was with her. He had never had a reason to be so happy in the past. He apologized for making her wait too long, so he suggested they go right away. On the way, he explained that he had converted an extension into her workshop not far from the estate. It may be smaller, but he believes she will find it quite suitable. Rebecca stood stunned when she saw the large structure. She couldn't believe it was a workshop. It looked more like a small mansion than an extension. The girl thought that he probably renovated one of the rooms. When the front door opened, she froze in amazement. It was a large room filled with all the necessary paraphernalia for alchemical research. She couldn't believe her eyes. Rebecca circled the workshop, asking if this was really for her. The man confirmed and then asked if she liked it. The excited girl ran up to him and replied that not a single alchemist in the world would refuse such a workshop. She walked around the room, looking around with delight. Carlyle watched her with a smile. He said he tried to equip the place with only the latest and highest quality products. Rebecca noticed that she now understood why the ladies were so obsessed with him. The man laughed and thought that she was the only one who didn't want to give him even a glance. Rosaline watched the gentleman from the open door. She wondered how his lordship knew so precisely what the lady preferred. The maid wondered if this would be right, but then again, she was an adult, so she should be fine. Rebecca woke up. She blinked, not recognizing the ceiling. Then she remembered that she was now staying with the Rowensters. The girl sat up from the pillows and stretched. At first, she didn't think she would be able to sleep in the new environment. But the bed was very comfortable, so she slept like a log. Looking out the window, the lady noticed that it was still early morning, so she would have to wait a few more hours before she could go to the workshop. She woke up too early. Then it dawned on Rebecca that she now had her own workshop. That meant she no longer had to wait for O'Clain's workshop to open. Jumping off the bed, the girl quickly headed for the door. The maid called out to her. Rosaline laughed and said that she knew she would do that. The maid handed her her new work clothes. Rebecca was delighted as she looked at the outfit. The maid noticed that the mistress always didn't care about all her beautiful dresses. She didn't even know if she should be happy about it. The lady noted that the work dress had lots of pockets. Rosalind said that she had added more. Rebecca rushed to embrace the maid, declaring that she loved her. The maid suggested that she direct that love to someone else. The girl quickly changed and was already heading for the door when Rosalind asked if she would have breakfast. Saying later, the lady ran out the door. The lady was running down the corridor when she bumped into Carlyle. She greeted him as she went, without stopping moving. The Duke asked where she was running first thing in the morning. Rebecca turned slightly and replied that she had woken up early and was now going to the studio. Rowenster watched his bride's heels disappear with a smile. He was glad that she really liked it, but also a little disappointed. The girl burst into her workshop. Frozen at the entrance and looking around, she still could not believe that all this was hers. Rebecca was happy. The Duchess was giving orders to a maid in the drawing room. She asked for part of the order to be corrected. Then she asked how their guest was doing. The maid replied that Rebecca was in her studio almost all the time. Abigail asked if that was all. The maid replied that she was not quite sure. Her ladyship said with a smile that it could not be, that even the head maid did not know. The Duchess thought about it. It turned out that the girl had not left her studio, so she asked to call her personal maid O'Clain. When Rosaline arrived, Abigail asked if Rebecca was okay. The girl looked confused and couldn't answer clearly. Her ladyship suggested that the maid might be frightened after moving to the ducal estate, so she said she wanted the girl to feel as comfortable as she did at home. Rosaline, gathering her courage, loudly asked the Duchess to stop Lady Rebecca. Abigail and the maids went into the workshop. They found Rebecca sitting on the floor, surrounded by test tubes, muttering something about reactions. Rosaline turned to the lady and said that the Duchess had come to see her, but the girl did not react in any way. She continued to mumble about formulas. Her ladyship decided to take matters into her own hands. She called Rebecca by her full name loudly. The girl jumped in surprise. The lady turned towards them and lifted her glasses. The Duchess said that she now understood why her maid had asked for help. Madame added angrily that Rebecca should be reprimanded for this. She understood that she was passionate and serious about alchemy. But such behavior was unacceptable. Even Carlyle, who had ascended beyond human limits, was still eating and sleeping. She asked the girl if she knew how many days had passed. Abigail leaned over and touched her face. She noticed that it was drawn. The woman added that if her mother saw her like this, she would be upset. Rebecca looked at her in surprise and asked if she knew her mother. The Duchess replied that of course she did, but that's not the main thing. Even if it's a contractual engagement, she still remains her son's fiancée, and until the contract ends, she will consider her part of their family. The girl was touched and thanked the Duchess. Her ladyship added that she would not allow her family to be neglected in this way. She turned to Rosaline. If Lady Rebecca ever misses a meal or refuses to sleep, she is to report it to the head maid immediately. Then she gave orders to the head maid. After receiving this report, she was to get the lady out of this workshop, even if she had to call everyone to do it. Rebecca pleaded. She just needed to work a little harder. The Duchess glared at her. She said that if she continued to be stubborn, she would completely forbid her from entering this workshop. Rosaline, practically pushing the lady out of the workshop, persuaded her to eat and get some sleep. Her ladyship, watching them go, noticed that the girl's head was filled only with thoughts of alchemy. Her son had also neglected to take care of himself before, as he was absorbed in his sword training. She believed that there was no way to help people as determined as they were. Carlyle found his bride munching on a sandwich in the living room. He smiled and noted that she finally felt like eating. Rebecca looked back and said that Mistress Abigail had scolded her. The man asked again in surprise. The girl confirmed. Then she added that her ladyship had said that she should also eat all the snacks. The Duke replied that he could speak to his mother. The lady said no. Frankly, she reminded her of her late mother. And that was nice. Rebecca asked him what brought him here. Carlyle replied that he had come to deliver bad news. The lady clarified. His lordship took an envelope from his breast pocket and said that they had received an invitation to the Crown Prince's birthday. At the Imperial Palace, at a celebration in honor of the Emperor's son's birthday, the guests were all talking about Rebecca. One lady remarked that it looked like they would finally be able to see this rarely seen face for once. Another lady was indignant at how she could turn down all invitations. They don't call her the eccentric lady for nothing. She must think quite highly of herself now that she's become the Duke's fiancée. The Duke of Rowanster and Lady O'Clane were announced. All the guests immediately turned to look at them. Rebecca was wearing a beautiful gold dress that showed off her figure to great advantage. The skirt of the dress and her hair flowed as she walked. The Duke wore white trousers and a black jacket embroidered with gold. His breast pocket was adorned with a large sapphire brooch. There was a murmur among the guests. The women could not believe that this was the same eccentric lady. They called her a rough diamond. The Duke and his bride went to the imperial couple to congratulate the Crown Prince on his birthday. The child thanked them. In turn, the current emperor congratulated his cousin on his engagement. Carlyle bowed and asked permission to take his leave. Aubert replied that they could go. In any case, the former emperor was waiting for them. Watching the departing couple, the emperor thought that together they looked even better than he expected. The Duke, observing Rebecca, noticed that she was too reserved and silent. He asked if she was feeling well. The girl whispered that everything was fine. Then the man asked what was upsetting her. She replied that nothing was at all. Carlyle continued to press her as to why she was so careful in her speech. The lady flushed and sharply asked her to stop talking so much. She noticed that she was trying to say only what was necessary so as not to make any mistakes. The man asked again in surprise. Rebecca replied that Charlotte and Madame Abigail had chosen this dress for her. But when she used a metaphor to explain how much she liked it, they laughed. His lordship asked him not to pay any attention to his sister. The lady turned to him and said that the Duchess had called her a rather amusing young lady. Carlyle, smiling, replied that he was sure his mother meant it as a compliment, to which the girl remarked that other people would not be the same. The Duke concluded that she had been quiet so as not to say anything wrong. Rebecca explained, upset, that she meant that if she made a mistake, it would reflect badly on his family. She just didn't want to inconvenience him. Rowanster was a little touched. He thanked her for her concern, but he said he didn't want her to overexert herself. The man suggested they finish it quickly and leave as they had planned. The lady replied that it sounded great. The young couple came to greet the former emperor. The man was glad to see them and congratulated them on their engagement. Then he asked if they liked his gift. The Duke quickly whispered in the bride's ear that he had given them a villa in the south. Rebecca covered her mouth with her hands in surprise. The emperor scolded his nephew for telling her this only now. The girl bowed and replied that it was a great honor for her. His Majesty smiled and said that it was just a small engagement gift. After coughing a little, the Emperor asked Carlyle to bring him a glass of wine, as he felt a little dry. The Duke left. Rebecca was surprised by this request, since it was possible to call a servant. The Emperor asked if it was too stuffy in there. He suggested going out to get some fresh air in the garden. The girl happily agreed. Seeing Rebecca and the former Emperor walking next to them, the ladies began to grumble that it seemed that Lady O'Clane had already won the favor of His Majesty. Another lady remarked that from now on, it would be better to improve relations between the alchemist family. Coming out into the garden, the Emperor unceremoniously asked Rebecca directly what her relationship with the Duke was. The girl replied that it was obvious that they were an engaged couple. His Majesty said he knew it was all just an act, but she shouldn't worry. Rebecca began to breathe quickly. The Emperor went on to say that he expected his nephew to do something to get out of it. Then, turning to her and looking sideways, he added, however, what he did not expect was that she would take part in this. He was surprised to see the two of them together today. It raised a few new questions. His Majesty inquired whether the lady had known Carlyle before. She replied that she had not. Scratching the back of her head, the girl added that, as he probably knew, she almost never participated in social events. The day she went to the Rowensters after receiving the letter of proposal was their first meeting. The Emperor chuckled. He thought that her nephew seemed very fond of her, which was not like him at all. The girl asked what was bothering him. The Emperor replied that he had never seen Carlyle look at a girl for so long. He had also never seen him smile, so he suggested that they might actually be lovers. Rebecca snapped back that they were absolutely not. His Majesty grinned into his mustache. He expressed the hope that the lady would take good care of his nephew. The girl began to say that perhaps His Majesty had misunderstood something, but she was interrupted by the Duke's voice, who asked her not to torment his bride. Rowenster brought 2 glasses of wine. The Emperor asked what took him so long. The nephew, handing 1 glass to his uncle, replied that he had to find the one wine that he always drinks. Besides, they went out into the garden without even warning him. His Majesty thanked them for the wine. He let the two of them enjoy the night. Watching the lovers from afar, the Emperor mentally turned to his late friend. He felt that something might blossom in Carlyle's heart very soon. His nephew was smilingly handing a glass of wine to his bride. The Duke asked what His Majesty had said to Rebecca. She hesitated a moment, and then replied that he had already realized that their engagement was a sham. The celebration went on as usual. After a small buffet, it was time for dancing. Couples were rhythmically spinning to the sounds of music. The Duke and his bride were dancing among them, discussing what the Emperor knew about their fake engagement. Rebecca wondered what they would do if he tore her apart. Carlyle smiled and told her not to worry about it. He was prepared. The girl asked if he was really sure that everything was all right. His lordship asked him to trust her. Rowenster pointed out that they were the center of attention. Everyone was looking at them like a pack of hungry wolves. The guests were looking at them so intently that it seemed as if they were ready to pounce as soon as their dance was over. The Duke asked her not to worry. He would sacrifice himself to protect her at any cost. The girl asked if it was true. He confirmed it. Rebecca smiled broadly and said that she would leave it to him then. Then she ran away, leaving her bow behind. As soon as the Duke was left alone, a crowd of women immediately rushed at him, asking for a minute. The lady hid in a small living room. She sat down on the sofa and noticed how tired she was, but her loneliness was short-lived. Several girls entered the room and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Rebecca thought wearily that here they were. The brunette asked if she should say she was glad to see her. Then she asked if Lady O'Clane planned to read a book here again. The girl replied that she could no longer behave as before. After all, she was now the Duke's fiancée. Charlotte, when preparing her for the celebration, warned that if anyone tried to put her down, they should simply remind them that she was now the Duke's bride. The brunette hissed angrily that she refused to accept someone like her as his lordship's bride. Rebecca innocently replied, "So what?" The woman screeched that she was being arrogant. She asked if Lady O'Clane really thought she deserved his lordship. The redhead got up from the couch and answered seriously that it was up to her and Carlyle to decide, and whether anyone accepted it or not was none of her business. The brunette screamed, how dare she pronounce his lordship's name so carelessly? The woman who entered the room asked what all the fuss was about. Lady Haley, fanning herself, noticed that this was where all the stars of the occasion were, that the ballroom was dark because all the brightest flowers of the empire were hidden here. The girls replied that they simply needed to have a little chat with Lady Rebecca. Haley asked about what. The ladies replied that they found it hard to believe that this lady had become the Duke's bride. The Marchioness, with a smile on her lips, asked if they had any right to complain about it. Then she asked to be left alone for a moment. She also needed to speak to Lady Rebecca. The girls left the room indignant at how unpleasant she was, and that she thought she was better than them. Left alone with the Marchioness, Rebecca swallowed nervously. Haley bowed and said that she had long wanted to meet her. Lady O'Clane also bowed her head in greeting and remarked that she had heard a lot about her. Charlotte warned her that the one she should be most wary of was Lady Carcius. Her obsession and fixation on the Duke was very strong. Haley, with a grim expression, said she just wanted to give her advice. Rebecca asked what it was. The Marchioness simply told her to call off the engagement. Lady O'Clane was indignant and asked why she should do that. Haley asked with cold eyes if she didn't know the answer to that question. Then she added that she thought she was smart because she was an alchemist, but Rebecca was the stupidest creature she had ever seen. The redhead was dumbfounded by such rudeness. The Marquise continued to say that she had stolen a position to which she had no right. Lady O'Clane asked what position she was talking about. Haley whispered in her ear that Carlisle had always been hers, from the very beginning. This man was born to protect her. Rebecca said indignantly that the Duke was not property that she could possess. The Marquise assumed a menacing pose, her hands on her hips. She warned that the girl should listen to her while she was still polite. Lady O'Clane simply replied that she was not afraid of her. Haley could do nothing to her. She has no power, so she wastes her precious time giving her stupid advice. All she can do is wait until Rebecca leaves the Duke. The Marchioness gets furious and calls her a little girl. The redhead asked if she loved his lordship or if she just wanted to own him. Haley grabbed her by the shoulders and shouted that it didn't matter. She would do anything to get him. Squeezing her shoulders, Lady Carcius ordered her to leave the Duke before she regretted it. Charlotte came in and pushed the Marchioness away, ordering her to stop it immediately. Haley said that she couldn't do that to her. She is the only reason Lady Rowanster can hold her head high among the other nobles. If she received help, she must be able to repay the kindness. Kneeling down right now would not be enough, since she dared. Rebecca interrupted, trying to shame her. But the woman noticed that it seemed like the people of Rowanster House took her kindness for granted. Charlotte replied that she did not remember anyone asking the Marchioness for her generosity. She probably helped her to win her brother's favor. Haley guessed that the Duke's sister probably wanted to go back to the days when she was mocked as a widow who had never even had a wedding night. Charlotte frowned and said she didn't care. She grabbed Rebecca and pulled her towards the exit. Still holding the girl's hand, the Duke's sister led her out into the garden. Rebecca asked if she was okay. Charlotte stopped and, without turning around, said that it was true. She had once been married to the son of the Marquis of Lonaroon. He has now given up his title to retire to the country. Lady Haley was right. She is a widow. After their wedding ceremony, something terrible happened. They were tired from a long day and planned to rest at home. But suddenly a villain burst into the room, aiming at her husband. Perhaps the killer did not want the Duke to pursue him, so he did not touch her. At that time, the Marquis had many enemies. He was not a bad man, but he had ambitions. Therefore, he feuded with many houses to gain power. After that night, the Marquise did not want to let her go, so her family sued him to annul the marriage. In the end, the Rowansters won, and she returned home. But in the process, their families began to feud with each other. The Marquise left the capital deeply offended by Charlotte, most likely because his son had been killed while she had survived. Rebecca was indignant and said it wasn't her fault. The girl smiled and replied that she was right, but it was still impossible to stop people from avoiding her and calling her a widow. Naturally, she became an outcast in high society. Carlisle then told her that she was free to marry someone else once she recovered. Or she could choose not to marry if she didn't want to. He would take care of her anyway. But Charlotte didn't want to burden her brother. She wanted to be good at something, just like Rebecca. Lady O'Clane took the Duke's sister's hand in a friendly manner and suggested that they return together. She said that they should not remain in such a place. The girl kindly suggested going home. Charlotte smiled and agreed. Some time later, Lady Rowenster was walking in the garden. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound and someone muttering that it was just a little while longer. The girl looked around but saw no one. Then she looked up and saw Rebecca hanging from a tree branch. The crazy woman grabbed a tree branch with her arms and legs. Charlotte screamed her name. The girl looked down and said that she had scared her. The Duke's sister replied that she should have said so. Rebecca jumped lightly to the ground. Charlotte asked what she was doing there. The girl handed her a golden sphere with wings. She explained that it was a weapon-type magical tool. It was supposed to fly and attack enemies on its own. But she can't get it to hover properly. By a lucky chance, the thing got caught on a branch, so she was able to climb up and get it back. The Duke's sister, amazed, asked how she had climbed the tree. Rebecca replied that alchemists must be able to get anywhere to gather the necessary materials. After all, they could be on a cliff or in the ocean. Charlotte suggested that she must have been training to collect materials on her own as well. Rebecca confirmed. She completed courses in basic strength training and even asked her father to let her learn to swim and climb. Then the girl realized that she shouldn't tell anyone about it. She asked Charlotte not to tell anyone about what she had just seen. If Rosaline or the Duchess found out about this, they would definitely scold her. The girl giggled and promised. But in return, she wanted to have tea with her in the greenhouse. Rebecca was surprised, and the Duke's sister realized that she had not been there before. The orangery is the pride of the Rowenster family. It's just huge! All the previous duchesses took care of it. There's a fountain and all sorts of flowers and plants. The girls headed straight there, but were met at the entrance by the head maid. She bowed and warned them that Madame Abigail was currently resting there. Charlotte sighed a little sadly and said that nothing could be done. She would show the greenhouse next time. Rebecca wondered why they couldn't just have tea with the Duchess. The Duke's sister hesitated a moment and then said that she had guessed that Carlisle had not told her. In fact, there are rules that must be strictly followed in their home. She already knows that her mother is sick, but she does not like to show her condition, so she periodically goes to rest alone. And so, this became a rule for them. They must not disturb Mother when she was resting in the greenhouse. Charlotte hoped that she would follow him too. Rebecca replied that she understood. Moving on, the Duke's sister went on to say that their greenhouse was quite famous. They held tea parties there when the roses were in bloom. Rebecca heard a suspicious rustling sound and looked in the direction of the sound. After a small whistle, there was a blow to the roof of the greenhouse. The girl rushed there. On the way, she thought about what to do. She was told to be more responsible literally yesterday, and she had already gotten into trouble. She will never make another magical weapon again, because it was he who caused the trouble in the greenhouse. Yesterday, the Duke told her that monsters continue to attack the northern border, so he will have to leave for a while. He doesn't intend to stay there long. Carlisle has asked her to take care of the Rowenster estate while he is away. Rebecca happily promised, adding that his lordship could rely on her. Opening the door to the greenhouse, she mentally asked the Count for forgiveness. She could not believe that she had made such a huge mess while he was away. In the greenhouse, she saw the Duchess standing with a turban on her head. Her Highness was holding her golden ball in her hand from which smoke was coming. The women stared at each other. Rebecca lost her nerve and screamed, "Mom!" and ran away, shouting that she was so sorry. The next morning, Mrs. Abigail woke up and was tidying herself up at the dressing table. When the maid came in, she asked her to help her get ready. Taking the turban off her head, the maid asked what wig the lady would choose today. The Duchess replied that it was the lightest. The maid helped her put it on and fix it. Her ladyship said that perhaps she should invest in a wig business. They shouldn't be so heavy and awkward. The assistant noted that all of hers were made from real human hair, making them look more natural. Abigail added that this was in fact their only positive quality. Then she asked how her daughter was. She was told that she had just woken up. Having made the final fixation of her hair, the Duchess asked to invite Rebecca. They needed to discuss what had happened yesterday. The maid replied that the girl was already waiting for her. The woman was surprised. The maid added that she wanted to give her something. The lady waited for the Duchess to wake up. Lady O'Clane, seeing her ladyship, rose to her feet and greeted her. She bowed and apologized for visiting the lady at such an early hour. Abigail said she shouldn't be so nervous. Nothing could stay a secret forever. She assumed the girl would find out someday. A few years ago, the Duchess began to have heart problems. Fortunately, the disease was completely cured, but in the process, she lost all her hair. She has a reputation to uphold. The woman feels quite insecure about it. That's why she hasn't attended social events for some time now. Of course, that's one thing, but her dangerous experiments with magical instruments are something else entirely. The girl tried to say something, but couldn't find the right words. So she just held out some bottle and said that she really wanted to give it to her. Rebecca prepared this elixir to express her regret. She very much hoped that her ladyship would accept it. The woman picked up the bottle. Looking at it, she asked what it was. Lady O'Clane replied that it was a hair-growing potion. The Duchess and her maid's eyes widened. She asked her what she had said. The girl hoped that she hadn't accidentally offended her. She just wanted to apologize for what had happened yesterday. Abigail, stuttering a little, asked to be told again what kind of potion it was. Rebecca replied that it was a potion created through alchemy that accelerates hair growth. Her ladyship said that such a potion simply could not exist. It would be a miracle. The girl replied that it existed. Abigail asked if she had really made it. Rebecca explained that she was originally working on a cure for scars, but she ended up making it by accident. She had already verified that it worked and that there were virtually no side effects. Her ladyship asked again if she was really sure. Lady O'Clane said that if she didn't want it, she would take it. The Duchess asked a little more sharply to wait. Then I asked how to use it. Rebecca replied that it should be applied to the skin. The maid said she would get everything ready immediately and went into the bathroom. Abigail asked if she could trust the girl's words. Rebecca replied that of course, although her hair might grow longer than she expected. The Duchess burst into giggles and then burst out laughing. The maid returned and said that she had everything ready. Looking back, her ladyship asked the girl to do her the honor. Lady O'Clane put on gloves and began to rub the elixir into the Duchess's scalp. She asked how it felt. The woman replied that something sticky had been smeared on her head. Rebecca said that now all that was left was to wash it off. Abigail closed her eyes and tried to collect her thoughts. She was too excited. Of course there was no hair growth potion. A few minutes later, golden hair appeared on her head, as if by magic. The maid and the lady herself were shocked. The Duchess touched her hair with her hands and could not believe it. The lady decided that this was a potion. No, this girl was a real miracle. In the evening, the Duke returned home. He was greeted by his butler, who asked if he should prepare everything for his rest right away. Carlyle replied that he was in no hurry, so there was no need to hurry. His lordship asked if everyone was in their bedrooms. The servant replied that the Duchess was still awake in the drawing room. Rowanster was surprised. He went to his mother and knocked on the door. Entering the living room, the son bowed, greeting Abigail. The woman, playing with her hair, asked if he was tired. The son noticed his mother's different hair color. He asked if she had dyed it. The Duchess replied that Rebecca was truly an amazing girl. The Duke asked again. Her Grace replied that she was absolutely incredible. The next day, sitting at the dinner table, Abigail once again sincerely thanked her son's fiancé. She said that she gave her life back. Rebecca replied that Madame was overpraising her. The Duchess asked how long the effect lasted. The girl replied that it all depended on the person, but overall, about 10 days. The woman was pleasantly surprised by the answer. Lady O'Clane asked guiltily if she was disappointed that it would only last 10 days. Her ladyship replied that it was not at all. Moreover, it was much longer than she had expected. Rebecca said she'd make more potion before this one ran out, so the lady shouldn't worry. Abigail replied that she couldn't be happier to hear that. Everyone at the table smiled. The Duchess remarked that Hymes O'Clane was a great alchemist. Her brother, the Emperor, was very sad to hear the news of his departure. But how wonderful that his daughter turned out to be such a brilliant alchemist. Like father, like daughter. Rebecca even opened her mouth in surprise. Abigail took a deep breath, resting her head on her shoulder. She wondered why their talents weren't known to the world yet. The girl was embarrassed. She asked that he not flatter her so much. She did not deserve all this praise because of a failed project. The Duchess exclaimed that this was not a failed project. She had created something marvelous. It was the best potion she had ever seen in her entire life. Lady O'Clane shifted in her chair. She said that from an alchemical point of view, it was not even a magical instrument. It's such a trivial thing that it won't even last long. Abigail asked indignantly if she wasn't putting herself down too much. The girl must really believe what she was saying. Rebecca, hanging her head, replied that she had always been told that her creations were useless. Her ladyship slammed the table down and asked who dared to say that to her. Only an exceptional fool would utter such nonsense. The girl replied that it was her father and older brother. Abigail, coughing, noted that her son's father-in-law would set the bar pretty high, being a genius. Rebecca wondered why her ladyship had called her father her son's father-in-law. The Duchess repeated once more that Lady O'Clane had done something incredible. It was indeed a dream potion in the truest sense. The girl asked again if she really thought so. After all, it wasn't even a magic weapon and wasn't comparable to the Philosopher's Stone at all. The woman replied that Rebecca was an alchemist, while she was not. Therefore, their values could differ. A general preparing for war will naturally desire more magical weapons. A poor man who has no money even for food will naturally desire the Philosopher's Stone, which can create gold from anything. But she doesn't want any of it. None of it. The only thing she's ever wanted is to have her hair back. That's why this potion is the most valuable and useful thing for her. Rebecca was touched. Abigail added that she was sure the others would agree with her. Tears came to the girl's eyes. Her ladyship tried to calm Rebecca down. Carlyle cleared his throat discreetly, and Charlotte wondered if the ladies had forgotten that they were here too. The Duchess smiled and asked her children to hurry up and start breakfast. The daughter exclaimed, "Is it really important now?" She had to say that her illness was completely cured. They had no idea about it and were very worried. Carlyle asked why she had kept it a secret until now. Abigail replied that it was for their sake. People would probably make fun of the two of them if they knew she was bald. Charlotte exclaimed that it would be so, for she was so afraid that her mother would fall again. Her ladyship graciously asked for forgiveness for their deceitful mother. In any case, she had something more important to discuss today. The daughter asked indignantly what could be more important than this. The Duke tried to calm his sister down. The Duchess thanked Rebecca once again for creating the incredible potion. After they finished breakfast, she would like to discuss the business plan for its commercialization. The redhead shuddered and opened her mouth. Abigail, touching her hair again, said that it would be a shame if she was the only one who knew about this magical invention, so she offered to put her potion on the market. Her ladyship guarantees that it will be a huge success. Rebecca said doubtfully that no one would want to buy her product, to which the Duchess replied that this potion would change the lives of many people. Charlotte agreed that people would be willing to pay any price to buy it. The girl was surprised by her support. The Duke's sister smiled and asked to be called by her friendly nickname, simply Char. Rebecca, calling her Cher, asked if she also thought her potion was valuable. The girl replied that of course she did. The Duke's sister added that it was obvious. She would kill to get a potion that would help a bald man to restore his hair. The Duchess confirmed that this potion will be an absolute success. Even more, it will certainly go down in history. Rebecca asked the Duke what he thought. He asked if she really meant to just keep it. The girl replied that she was not yet sure whether something like that would sell. Charlotte exclaimed that she simply had to sell it. This incredible potion should not be known only to their mother. It should be mass-produced. An alchemy workshop would be needed. However, she didn't think the O'Clane workshop would be suitable. Other locations would need to be considered. Then they started discussing that if they entrusted it to a trading company or a guild, they would demand a large contribution, and so on in the same vein. Charlotte asked if she had any other potions to sell. Rebecca said she didn't think so. Abigail said she could no longer trust her judgment. She felt they should see for themselves. Charlotte supported her mother and asked to show them everything she had. Rebecca got up from her chair. She didn't understand what was happening, so she just ran away.